let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, the big hire head coach Raheem Morris is in town, and now he's trying to fill out his staff. We saw two big new changes at offensive and defensive coordinators, but as this week has gone on, Morris has started to fill out the rest of his staff, and there's been a lot of the same. Something that you look at, I think, just describes how good the Falcons were at certain things this year in particular and just how big of a problem Arthur Smith was as the head coach. Just the overall scheme and fit for this Falcons team that had a lot of talent and a lot of great coaches. I think we're going to see that in this article we have today. Let's get into it and we can talk about it on the other side. This, of course, is from Atlanta Falcons' own website. It says the Atlanta Falcons' new head coach, Raheem Morris, hit the ground running and is in the process of building his 2024 staff. Morris was named the Falcons' 19th head coach in franchise history Thursday, January 25th. He then announced his coordinators, Zach Robinson with the offense, Jimmy Lake with the defense, and Marquise Williams with the special team. Now, Morris is filling out the rest of his organizational chart with many faces the Falcons fans will be familiar with. We see Jerry Gray retained as assistant head coach and slightly leaning towards defensive side of things. TJ Yates moved from wide receiver coach to quarterback coach. Dwayne Ledford retained as O-line coach with added run game coordinator responsibilities. Michael Petrie retained as running back coach, and Dave Huxtable retained as a senior defensive assistant. There's a couple other names, but the core of these guys that we see, Nick, are those assistant and position coaches that have been with the Falcons either at least last year, but some of these guys for a while, just showing the Falcons have a lot of talented coaches on this roster that really weren't used to their potential. But Raheem Morris has come in, he's seen a lot of these guys, seen what they're able to do, and he wants them to be on his staff as well. Because as we know in the NFL, the consistency is the key. Keeping a lot of guys the same, keeping the same scheme through a while, that's going to make a team be a true contender. We see some of the best teams in the NFL right now. You look at Ravens with John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh has been there forever. You look at the Patriots for a long time. Bill Belichick, he had been there for a very long time. Obviously, he's not there now. But you look at some of the best coaches in the NFL. Mike Shanahan's been with the 49ers for a little while. They're starting to get more consistency. That is what is making these teams so successful. So I think being able to retain a lot of these position coaches, a lot of these assistant head coaches, is going to keep some consistency in the Falcons training facilities, in the Falcons day-to-day activities. I think it's going to help the players get through this transition. Curious, Nick, what your thoughts are. But Falcons fans, of all these coaches that you know and probably love, which one of them was your favorite the Falcons were able to retain on this team? Let us know in the comment section below. Nick, what do you think about the retainment of these coaches for the Falcons?
So at first glance, it's a little unique, right? Because normally when there's a new regime that comes in, especially with new offensive coordinator, a lot of the old guys just get shoveled out the door and the new staff brings in some of their new favorites. So that's what kind of jumped out to me as a little odd. But let's take a second here and remember the problem with the Atlanta Falcons the last couple seasons. It wasn't talent, right? They had elite level talent on the offensive line. They had great skill players, running back, receivers, tight ends. I mean, they check every box with talent. It wasn't that these guys were not being developed correctly. We saw Bijan Robinson ready to jump in day one. We've seen a lot of these other guys get better and better. I think Kyle Pitts is actually becoming a more well-rounded receiving tight end in terms of his fundamentals. I think the same thing could be made of London, the young wide receiver. That's a lot on the position coaches. The problem was the head man, was the offensive coordinator, head coach Arthur Smith, and his overall scheme and strategy. That was clearly the problem, right? That's obvious for anyone who watched the Atlanta Falcons. At the individual level, they were really good, but as part of the collective strategy, they had a lot of issues. So what does Raheem Morris, new head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, do? He gets Zach Robinson from the Sean McVay scheme, the smartest, maybe Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, right? Similar kind of concepts, but between him and Shanahan, McVay's scheme is the smartest, the best at utilizing talent in the NFL, bar none. I truly believe that. They get a guy from that scheme, that McVay system, to come over to Atlanta and fix the strategy problem. Again, the problem wasn't at the individual level. The running backs coach is good. The receivers coaches were good. The quarterbacks coaches were good. The offensive line coaches were good, right? A lot of these assistants were doing a really good job at the individual level. It was Arthur Smith at the top that was the problem. Raheem Morris and the Atlanta Falcons, obviously they got rid of him as the head man, but they still had to address the scheme and the strategy. Robinson is a scheme and strategy guy. He's coming to the Atlanta Falcons to fix just that. And I think that is what makes the Falcons a whole lot better. And that's why this is a smart strategic move. Like you said, Mize, continuity, especially with young players, really matters, right? If you've got a young, talented group of skill players, you don't want them to change position coaches all of the time, because the position coach, that's the guy that's working with them through 3/4 of the practice. That's the guy in the film room with them. That's the guy they're talking to all off season. It's that position coach they're spending most of their time with. You've got young guys like Robinson and Pitts and London. You don't want to upset the apple cart in terms of the entire offensive coaching staff and make a lot of discontinuity and a lot of unfamiliarity between themselves and the coaches. Let's keep that in place, because that was good. That wasn't the problem. Scheme was the problem. Arthur Smith is gone. Sean McVay's acolyte, Zach Robinson, is in. Scheme is now fixed. Everything else will remain the same. The Atlanta Falcons should be a lot better. This is great decision-making by Raheem Morris and the Atlanta Falcons. They're quietly having one heck of a start to the offseason.
Yeah, Nick. And if you look at the rest of these hires as far as staff goes, and this goes more into the front office side of the coaching department, even there's some retainment of guys as and girls as well. You look at Donovan Ellison, Atlanta Falcons coaching operations assistant, retained this season at the same title. You look at Sarah Hogan, the Atlanta Falcons director of coaching operations, also retained with the same title in 2024. Then you look at Steve Scarnecchia. He was with the New York Jets, but he's also worked with the Falcons before in his career, and he was brought over as the chief of staff and coaching operations. So more of the same in the more front office style of coaching operations. But like you said, the main point remains. This is really, really smart coach building, staff building by Raheem Morris and this Atlanta Falcons team. I'm very excited to see what comes, because I think, like we said, this Atlanta Falcons team, a lot of talent. They really underperformed with the amount of talent they had. And I think we're going to see a much improved team just by the head coaching change alone.